Good afternoon, everyone. Is this thing on? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pastor Martin Otto Zimmern, Senior Director of Kindling Faith, and it is so wonderful to have this fall convocation together because it's very prescient and it's telling us the stuff we might not want to hear, but definitely need to hear at this time in our cultural milieu, which is a fire in a dumpster heading over a waterfall. I want to bring up my friend and colleague, Dr. Quentin Robertson, who's going to talk a little bit about the Urban Theological Institute fall lecture and other activities this week. So here he is.
Gracias. Is that too loud? Today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow, I like to see as the real kickoff for next year's bicentennial. On tomorrow, the annual UTI lecture, and then on Wednesday, our worship celebration during the chapel hour is part of the 45th anniversary of the Urban Theological Institute at United Lutheran Seminary. As you have walked on the first floor, you may have seen this flyer. Please take one. It tells you who's speaking and what's happening at each time. On Wednesday evening, the St. Thomas Gospel Choir will be in concert in the chapel. If you're still in town or you live nearby, please come in person. But if not, you can watch on our YouTube channel, United Lutheran Seminary YouTube channel. I say that specifically because I hear people say, type in ULS, nothing comes up for me. I have to type the whole name. So type the name of the seminary. I welcome you. I invite you to participate and join us tomorrow and Wednesday. Thank you, Martin, for this time. And by the way, if you just want to make a donation, there's a QR code there. Please use it.
Thank you, Dr. Robertson. It's going to be some wonderful events in the next few days. I look forward to them. I also want to very quickly point out and recognize Pastor Tara Lynn, who's with us from Portico. So if you have any trivia question, no matter how trivial, she can answer all of them. So. Kindling Faith has several online opportunities that are site agnostic. So if you want to add to your learning schedule, I'll give you a place you can go to register for them in just a second. But we have a lunch and learn with ULS faculty and a couple of guests starting up in October, a virtual lunch and learn. And the topics are amazing. So I hope you'll avail yourself of that opportunity. We have pastoral care sessions with Dr. Beth Toller starting in October. And this is the third year that she's been doing this series, and folks have really enjoyed and done some critical thinking around how best to care for the folks that they are called to serve. We are going to, in the time of Epiphany, Dr. David Grafton from Haverford is going to be doing an online series about Christian nationalism and Christian Zionism and how the two intersect. And I think that's going to be very powerful. So that'll be Wednesdays, I think at noon during the season of Epiphany. All of this can be accessed through our new website. Get ready, because it's really hard to remember, kindlingfaith.com. It is all one word, kindlingfaith.com, and click on events, and you will find everything that I just mentioned and more. One thing you won't find there, because I haven't had the chance to put it up yet, is our very own Reverend Dr. Alina Gajewski is getting a book published this spring, and the title of the book is Beyond the Stained Glass Ceiling, Clergy Women in a Still Patriarchal Church. So we are going to have fun on March 3rd at 7 p.m. here in Philadelphia. She's going to give a talk about that, and I hope you'll mark your calendars for that. We'll be promoting that soon. So congratulations, Dr. Gajewski. I'm very excited to see this. All right. Any other announcements for the good of the parish? That's what I say every Sunday morning. And everybody looks at the floor. So, her Freedom Rider mugshot has been called one of the most iconic in American history. By the time she was 23, Joan Trumpauer Mulholland participated in over 50 sit-ins and demonstrations, including the Freedom Rides, the Jackson Woolworth sit-in, the March on Washington, the Meredith March, and the Selma to Montgomery March. Her path has crossed with some of the biggest names in the civil rights movement: Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou Hamer, John Lewis, Diane Nash, and Julian Bond, to name a few. Her son Loki Mulholland is an Emmy-winning filmmaker, author, and activist. His work has received over 40 Telly Awards, and his films on race and social justice issues have won over 20 Best Documentary Awards. Loki is the author of multiple books, including She Stood for Freedom and Get Back to the Counter. His films have appeared on Showtime, PBS, and Amazon, where The Uncomfortable Truth has been viewed over 3 million times. He is the founder and executive director of the Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation, which was created to end racism through education. Would you join me in welcoming our friends and leaders?
All right. Well,
Thank you.
appreciate being here. Now, thank you for saying those were my books, by the way, because every time everyone says that my mom wrote them, doesn't matter if her name's on it. She made the movie. She makes the books. So, it was interesting to listen to Dr. De La Torre. When he talked about particularly the moral arc of the universe, and it reminded me, I had to go back in my notes and find it. I heard someone else speak about that and said, we need to be the gravity that bends that moral arc. And then he talked about the skin, something that has, you need to be involved in something that touches your skin and something that doesn't touch your skin, right? And my mom, obviously, the work that she did in the civil rights movement, a lot of people would have said that she didn't have a dog in that fight. But he also mentioned about the importance of that representation of someone who speaks on that. So, for example, he was referencing his work in the LGBT community, that his representation as a Southern Baptist helped facilitate that discussion, right? My mom's mere presence as the white Southern woman, it shook the foundations of Jim Crow, because that was what it was established on, protecting the white Southern woman. And so that's that importance. I wanted to kind of reflect on that for a moment before we jump in. And my mom, and finally, he said something as well I thought was very important about, you're not going to change the world. And I was like, wow, that's what we tell kids. Don't try to change the world. Change yours, whatever that might be, whether it's your school, your block, your community, whatever it might be, wherever you are. I think you hippies used to say, bloom where you're planted, right?
Yeah, bloom where you're planted.
Right, there you go. So with that being said, so I want to start this off, this is what we always do, is kind of take us back to the 1950s and 60s. I'm going to show multiple clips from the film An Ordinary Hero to kind of intersperse in this discussion, this journey of my mom's story. But I want to kind of lay the foundations of segregation and Jim Crow in the world that you grew up in. And this is your friends talking about growing up underneath, that oppressive system. So I can get this kick in. There we go.
In the 40s, in the German-occupied countries, if a Jew walked on the sidewalk, did not get off the sidewalk, when a German was coming and take his cap off, he was risking his life. So we had that same thing over here.
I always wondered why I had to go through the back door of the public library, why I could not go into the stacks to get my own books, why I had to go to the colored water fountain.
In Sears, I can remember white ladies and colored women bathrooms. You could not sit at Cress's counters. We used to go downtown and to buy candy or something. We couldn't sit at the counter.
We couldn't even go downtown and eat in a lot of the restaurants downtown in D.C.
Let's say we were supposedly equals. We were being treated that way, and I suddenly pissed off this white person. They had all kinds of things at their disposal to do me in, and there was nothing I could do about it.
He said, you ran that light. My dad said, no, sir, I didn't run the light. It was yellow. Morris, I said to you, you ran that light. My dad didn't say anything. And he looked at us in the back seat, and I guess we looked like a nice little family. And he said, Morris, you like a good so I'm gonna let you off this time.
It was a separate and unequal society, basically buttressed by local customs and laws.
But that was just the way things were. And you want to go, what do you mean that's the way things were?
I met whites all over who had questions raised. I later met blacks who, when they had questions raised, their parents had to tell them, it may be wrong, but don't you try to do anything about it. This is in God's hands. Here's how you protect yourself. Maybe you shouldn't ride the bus so much if that upsets you.
Your parents did that, but they also told you that it would come to an end. Because it was wrong. Anything that's that wrong can't last.
I love that statement. Anything that wrong can't last. I almost chuckled because, this is a clip we use for schools. So we, of course, mute some of these words. And it reminded me, we had a screening of this film on PBS in Utah. It was BYU TV, that was the PBS station. And they were really kind of like, well, we can't use the N-word on this. And so they called the NAACP, and they all got into this huge committee, and they're like, no, you need to use, that was historical context. If you take out the N-word, it's going to kind of mute everything. So when they aired it, they kept the N-word in, but they muted pissed off. So they had to mute something, so that's what they actually muted. It just kind of reminded me of that. But anyways, it was funny to me. I don't know. But this is the world you grew up in.
Right.
And, your mom's from Georgia. I mean, deep
Product of her environment.
environment, deep rooted. And when you were a little girl, I mean, this was, you guys would drive down the street in Halls Hill, for example, and
The black neighborhood, well, the road didn't go into it, but it went by it, yeah.
yeah.
And, man, she'd make sure all the car doors were locked. And told us not to look at anybody in any car we passed. It was,
Yeah. But
it was scary.
But at the same time, you also had the help.
Oh, yeah, we had the help, every week. Underpaid, but they were there.
Right.
Planning.
And then at 10 years old, every year you'd go and visit your grandmother in Georgia.
Yeah.
And at 10 years old, something happened.
Well, my girlfriend Mary and I snuck off and went where we were definitely not supposed to go, down the dirt road through the colored section of town. Now, colored was the polite term then. And, man, as we walked by the houses, people just made themselves disappear. They didn't want to know anything about those two little white girls coming down the road if they got asked. And then we got to the colored school. Man, that did it. It was a one-room shack. Never had an ounce of paint on it. No glass or screens in the window, just wooden shutters. The front door was ajar. You could see the pot-bellied stove for heat. And I knew out the other end of town was the fanciest building for miles and miles around. A brand new brick school for the white kids, with all the amenities like running water and electricity. And I knew this was not right. It was not doing what we learned in Sunday school about treating the people the way you want to be treated. And I knew then, but I couldn't have put it in words or explained it, that when I had the chance to do something to make the South the best it could be, didn't care about them Yankees, but to make the South the best it could be, I would do something. And that opportunity came when I was a freshman in college at Duke University, where Mother insisted that I go. She didn't want me to go to the school I wanted to go to, where my Sunday school teacher and her husband went, at Church College in Ohio, Muskingum. Now you've heard of of the Sunday school teacher's husband. His name was John Glenn, and I would sit with them every week in church after Sunday school. I wanted to go to their school. No, you're not going to that school. Nobody's ever heard of it. Well, I think it was, he was afraid it might be integrated, or knew that it was. You're going to go to someplace important, Duke University. Well, that was Mama's big mistake, because the sit-ins started that year, and Durham was one of the first places to have them.
First it was Greensboro on February 1st.
Greensboro, and within a couple of weeks, the sit-ins spread all over the South.
Yeah.
Kids like to get into good trouble back then. Still do, I reckon.
Yeah, well, and I want to roll back a little bit before that, because in high school you guys were battling Brown versus Board and this threat of integration, and obviously in Virginia in particular.
We didn't care if our school was integrated, because Virginia was closing schools, and we were afraid our high school would get closed. And we didn't care who was in class with us. We just wanted to graduate so we could go to college or get a good job. And
well, there was a student that was held back a year from another school district because that closed.
Yeah.
Even some of that direct impact.
Yeah.
But during that time, before going to Durham and so forth, there was a secret meeting that you had.
Church, we had Sunday evening youth meetings at church, and
it's the Presbyterians, by the way.
Presbyterian.
Sure.
Sorry. Well, not too sorry, but...
Well, that's a byword here. I'm just like,
No need to apologize, I reckon. But we were told that next week there would be some colored students come to visit us. They were coming through the Y, the black Y, because, of course, the Y was segregated. And I still don't know. I've been trying to find out. I still don't know if the Y contacted our youth minister or the youth minister contacted the Y, and I have never been able to find out. And I've tried. But we had to keep it a secret, because the police might show up and arrest us, the rowdies might show up and cause some bad trouble, or we might even get locked out of the building by somebody who had keys. And they came, and we had a nice, pleasant, we always had a meal together at Sunday evening meetings. Oh, and it was against the law to eat together, sit down at the same table, totally against the law. And, but we did it. We had a good conversation. A few of us stayed in touch for a number of years. And
I remember asking you about this. There was two things I remember in particular. One is I said, well, what about the separation of church and state? And your response was, well, what about it? And then you said, well, you thought that was a thing back then? But then I remember when we were shooting the film, I asked your sister, because we interviewed her for the film. She didn't make it the cut. But I said, I asked her about this secret spaghetti dinner, and she goes, what are you talking about? And this was 50 years later. And I said, I called, my mom was actually upstairs in another room. I said, hey, Mom, why didn't you tell her? She goes, well, it's a secret. I'm like, it's 50 years. She goes, well, we were told not to tell anybody. So there we go. If you need to keep a secret, it's the one. But so then you go to Durham, you go to Duke.
At Mother's insistence.
Mother's insistence, yes. Just to get away from Mom. I understand.
You all know that feeling.
Well, I know you know it, boy.
Don't go yell at me, Mom. Who's got the mic? There you go. You have to yell at me. That was God's work, to keep them from hearing all your curse words when you yelled at me. See? All right.
I could paddle you.
Yeah, you see that whole nonviolence thing that they had in the civil rights movement, that ended when she had children, just so you know. All right.
Take off your belt and hand it to me and bend over. Then I say, just love taps.
Love taps. Yeah. So there was 5 boys, by the way. A single mom, 5 boys. And it was 4 years and 3 months to separate the oldest from the youngest.
Good for the hand-me-downs anyway.
Yes, yes. So we kept her busy. Moving on.
You still keeping me busy.
Yes. You're going to derail me, Mother. But Duke, the sit-ins. And again, this was another invitation
The Presbyterian
to participate.
chaplain. And I went. He had the Sunday evening youth meetings, and I was a good girl. I went to those, and he told us next week there'll be some students who are involved in the demonstrations in town. They're going to come and talk to us about them, but don't tell anybody. Same reasons I'd heard before, and they came and explained in legal and moral terms about the demonstrations in town. And then, shock and awe, as they say now, they invited us to join them. So a handful of us did. And it led to the picket lines, and then to the lunch counters, and the county jail, and the courtroom. And ultimately, it led to the U.S. Supreme Court, which overturned the conviction, saying that demonstrating was freedom of speech. Well, Duke was not happy. And
before you talk about Duke's unhappiness, you were a little bit conflicted when they came, because you were kind of leaning more on the legal side of things. And then when they explained the moral elements as well, that's really what kind of converted you.
I reckon, if you say so.
Yeah, okay. Because that was kind of like how your dad was. Now, your dad, was in favor of integration, but he felt he didn't like the tactics.
Well, my father supported morally the demonstrations, but he was afraid his darling daughter would get seriously injured on those demonstrations, so he didn't like me being in them. Now, pop quiz. Daddy was from a small town in southwest Iowa, about 99.9% Swedish ancestry, probably Lutherans. And the town doctor had a good friend from his college days in Iowa. Now and he would show up. And this was, remember, was before Planters Peanuts and fresh produce year-round. Well, this doctor's friend had pockets full of peanuts, and he just throw them out in the grass for the kids to have a scavenger hunt. Who was this man with all the peanuts? Went to college in Iowa. First name is George. That's right. He became a hero to every kid in town, bringing them those peanuts. So I say, if you grow up with George Washington Carver as your childhood hero, you're not prejudiced. No, indeed. So Daddy supported our goals, but he didn't want his little girl to get hurt.
Well, he didn't even know, on the Freedom Rides that you were even in Mississippi until when?
They heard it on the radio that night when we got arrested. Sent me a letter.
You didn't bother telling them you were leaving?
Did you tell me everything you were doing, boy?
Yeah. Yes.
No.
All right, so Durham. So you have the sit-ins, the demonstrations and the sit-ins, and you're getting arrested. How did that work, going to school and getting arrested?
Well, it wasn't bad.
Yeah? Well, yeah, I mean, you had this one professor who was notorious for his pop quizzes, and...
Oh, yeah. And we were thinking we might have another demonstration, and I told him that, and said, if you give one of your pop quizzes and I'm in jail. Can I make it up when I get out of jail? He laughed and said, oh, no. I'll bring the quiz down to your jail cell. You can't cheat in there. And I found out just within the last 5 years anyway, that the reason we were not expelled by Duke was the university professor said if they kicked us out, they'd all go on strike. And it was almost exam time, so they didn't kick us out, but we had to get that psychiatric counseling.
Right, because Duke University thought you were mentally ill.
Yeah.
That, you know.
You don't think your mom was mentally ill?
I'm going to stay quiet. No, but I mean, but seriously, I mean, it was this element of they couldn't imagine why a white Southern woman would be involved in the movement. So they took you in for psychiatric evaluation. Yeah. And you clearly you weren't amused by that, so you left.
I hadn't wanted to go there to begin with.
Right. So that was a good excuse. But before you left, SNCC is founded, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, over, I guess, Shaw University. And then you get an invitation, since you're leaving, a request, if you will, to go check out what's going on at Howard.
Yeah. The students at North Carolina College, who were really the organizers of the demonstrations, they said they hadn't heard anything from Howard since the SNCC meeting, when SNCC was founded. Would I please, when I got back to D.C., would I go up there and find out what's going on and let them know? Well, did I know where Howard was exactly? Of course not. But I found out and got myself up there, and I was asking around campus, anybody, know anyone who's involved in sympathy pickets for the kids in the South. Didn't find anybody, but I found out there was going to be a meeting, I forget if it was that night or the next night or what, of people planning a sit-in. And when they found out I had been involved in sit-ins, and I was from Arlington, they asked me to go along with them. So we got out to Arlington, and we sat in at a few places, and kept sitting in here, there, and elsewhere. Woolworth's, Hot Shops, Howard Johnson's, the local drugstores. And then we took a break for about a week so that the county officials and the store managers could talk to each other. Then we went back. We hadn't heard anything. We went back and sat in again and got served. Lo and behold, well, most of the store managers were from liberal New York Jewish families that had come down for Roosevelt's good government jobs during the Depression. And they didn't have any personal problem with serving us, but the state law said that not only the people that sat together, whether it was in a church or a park or at a lunch counter, they could be arrested, but the people who enabled them, like the minister or the lunch counter manager, they could be arrested too. And the store managers and all, they just weren't ready to go to jail that day. They had no problem serving us, so once that threat was removed, they served us. And then the surrounding communities, 3 or 4 of them, said, well, if Arlington's not going to follow the state law, we aren't either. And that took us to segregated eating in Northern Virginia. We did pretty good.
I think what's remarkable to think about is that this started with, the student sit-in movement. There had been sit-ins before this, but the student sit-in movement of this 4 guys sitting at a lunch counter. And now the women of Bennett College came up with the idea.
Oh, of course it was the women behind it.
Right.
We all know that. Right, ladies?
But the guys jumped the gun and get all the credit.
And they didn't tell the women they were going to do it. They just up and usurped the idea.
But here you have 4, within a matter of a few days becomes thousands. Within a matter of a month or 2, it's 20 to 30,000 students across the South that are involved in sit-ins, really the country, for that matter. But I mean, it's remarkable what just a small group of people can do with that little bit of gravity, if you will, to bend that moral arc. Now, so you do the sit-ins, and then you've got, you start looking around, where else can you protest, right?
Oh, we thought, the beaches are all segregated. The ocean has black water and white water. Maybe we'll go to the beaches. And then, of course, we realized that was a bit of a commute, too much of a commute if you were going to take any summer courses. So we went to the local amusement park, Glen Echo. Now, where is the back of a merry-go-round? I'm asking you. Yeah. But going to that amusement park was always the highlight when I was growing up of every summer to go to Glen Echo. And I knew where to buy the tickets. You'd have a ticket for each ride you got on. So I went and got a handful of tickets while the other students hung back. And then when I came out the gate, they came out of hiding, and I handed out the tickets, and they dashed through the gate, and the first thing you come to is the merry-go-round. So they hopped on the merry-go-round and got arrested, ticket in hand. And that case got appealed through the courts, and it was combined with the Durham sit-in for the appeal to the United States Supreme Court. So I've been to the Supreme Court case twice. That's pretty good, huh? Been there twice. Anybody else beat that record?
I think it's something to note here is that you're being asked to do these things. You're not coming into a space and just imposing yourself and saying, "Well, I know what to do," or "Here's how you do it." You're being asked to do something.
Yeah, and that was the problem with a lot of those white Northerners that came down to join SNCC and things. They were trying to tell them how to do things, and they didn't know how to sing like they were in church. They didn't know what grits were. Oh, they were just Yankees.
We're in Pennsylvania, Mom.
I know.
But
I'm not a bit prejudiced against Yankees, am I? No.
as a matter of fact, you refused someone's hand in marriage because they wanted to move out of the South into up north, and because they wanted to move north, you said, "Yeah, I'm not getting married."
I don't remember that.
Oh yes, I remember. Yes, that's what happened. Anyways.
Why would I want to move up north?
Yes. The weather's nice right now.
I'll come up and run my mouth, but I don't want to move here.
So, and then the freedom rides happen.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to play that video.
And I'm going to blow my nose again.
This was an idea that caught the imagination of the country. However, the civil rights community thought it was a bit of a lark. They thought, oh, right, we're just going to ride on buses through the South, for a couple of months. It was almost seen as like a vacation. And some of the people who actually participated initially were viewed as, people who were just, slackers. They didn't want to do the hard work of going and demonstrating in front of, hardcore places, so they were just going to take a bus.
I think we knew from the start it could be dangerous. On the other hand, maybe to break the tension, maybe half thinking it, we were teasing Hank and some that, here you're going off on this all expense paid vacation. Good way to end the semester, buddy.
How I spent my summer in 1961. And let me tell you the ways.
They put together a small group of 13 riders, I think it was 13, who left Washington on 2 separate buses, making their way through the Upper South. In the Upper South, they were attacked a few times. A couple of people were beaten up, arrested, most notably in Rock Hill, South Carolina. But really all hell broke loose when they got to Alabama.
And all of a sudden, it made national news, and everybody realized this was not just a walk in the park. This was the next stage of the revolution.
I had already had a taste. I had seen the violence. I just barely escaped the Klan. So I had no illusions whatsoever about what was going to happen next. I didn't know anything about Anniston, Alabama, and then we were told that we are literally going into the belly of the beast. Anniston was a hotbed of Klan activity. And as a matter of fact, Jim Farmer, who was a pretty good stump speaker, spoke that night and told a joke about Anniston in terms of foretelling what we were going to be in for. And he said there was this bus driver driving a Greyhound bus, and as he got maybe 3 or 4 miles from Anniston, he heard this knock-knock thumping on the side of the bus, so he pulled over to see what it was, and as he opened the door, the Greyhound had gotten down off of the side of the bus and wanted to come inside. And so he asked and says, "Why do you want to do that?" He said, "We getting ready to go into Anniston." And there are variations of that joke of, he said, one preacher said, "Lord, we're getting ready to go down to Alabama and we want you to be with us." And then there was silence. And he said, "Lord, did you hear me? I want you to be with us." So he heard that voice, "I'll go with you as far as Anniston." So all kinds of joke about how dangerous it was going to be. And surely enough, when we got maybe a few miles outside of Anniston, we'd all had been singing on the bus, and as we did that from time to time, a bus coming from Anniston stopped on the opposite side of the highway, and the 2 bus drivers got out and spoke. And the driver of our bus got back on and looked at us and just kind of smiled. As we got into Anniston, the streets were deserted. No one. And it was telling us, this is not good.
A mob firebombed the bus as churchgoers brought their children to watch the Freedom Riders burn alive on Mother's Day. Riders were able to escape, only to be beaten with baseball bats until the local authorities finally stepped in. Freedom Riders were attacked 2 more times in Birmingham and Montgomery, where it appeared things would come to an end. But a call back to my mother in D.C. to send more riders, and a team led by Diane Nash in Nashville, re-energized everyone. However, my mother and the Freedom Riders were now entering Mississippi, a place many would call the heart of darkness. Yeah, so your journey was a little different, obviously. I mean, and obviously.
I have something else to say first.
Oh, all right, go ahead.
Okay, I was on a Rhodes Scholars trip to Bhutan, and the guy who was sitting next to me on the seat in the bus, he had actually seen the burning bus on Mother's Day. At the crossroads, they were going to his grandmother's grave to leave some flowers, and they got stopped by the police when they got to the up to that intersection where you would turn off to go into Anniston, and either way, where the bus was burning, and the police officer said just to go straight ahead, no turning. And looking out the window, they could see that burning bus down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, so your journey was different. This started off with the buses, and it was really about integration of the public transportation stations.
Because the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled past December that all the not just the vehicles of transportation, but all the facilities associated with commercial interstate travel had to be open to everybody equally.
And that's when you get the call, and you take the train down. You fly down to New Orleans, and then take the train.
Train headed to
Illinois Central to Chicago, and you get off from Jackson. But prior to that, you cooked up this idea about integration, and you ran it by the leadership of SNCC. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, with the riots with Charlene Hunter and Hamilton Holmes at the University of Georgia, I thought this is not integration. Just a couple of colored kids going through this, riots, tear gas, being taken off campus in squad cars twice. If integration is real, it's got to be a two-way street. Maybe I should apply to a colored school. And because I was thinking about going back to school around then, and talked the idea over with the SNCC leadership, and they agreed it was a good idea. And somebody, I think it was John Lewis, but I'm not sure, said, well, if you're going to do it, you may as well go to Mississippi, because those kids haven't done anything yet. Maybe you could help them get started. Now imagine sending a white Southern girl to Mississippi to help the black students get organized and going on sit-ins. Crazy as it comes, but I did it, and I looked up, I looked up for schools that were fully accredited, in case you want to go to grad school or college or something. And Tuvalu was the only school that was fully accredited in the entire state of Mississippi that colored students could go to. So I applied there, and I got a phone call. No, I got a letter saying that they had heard from Duke University with my transcripts, but they hadn't heard from my high school. So I called my high school, and the counselor said, well, we're not going to send your transcripts to that school. Well, I knew what she meant by that school, and I called Tuvalu, and they understood what it meant too. But they said, well, we'll accept you on your Duke transcript. Well, fast forward 62 years. This boy here had me on a podcast. Is that right, podcast?
Yeah.
With,
that's what it's called, Mom.
This superintendent of Alexandria City Schools, and he belonged to the other black fraternity, the Alpha.
An Alpha. Alpha, yeah, you know.
And with all due respect, sir. And so I told him, he said, well, I'll get in touch with my friend who's the superintendent of Fairfax County Schools, the next jurisdiction over. I'll get your transcripts sent. I said, well, don't pay that $15 they want to go back in the old records and get the transcripts. But don't pay them to do what they should have done to begin with. And I don't know if you did or not, but my transcripts arrived down at Tuvalu only 62 and a half years late.
Yeah. So you the Freedom Rides, the mugshot, and
Good-looking mugshot, too. We're both wearing it.
Yeah.
Not bad, not bad.
You're going to have a mugshot. Yes. Yeah, but and it's interesting because a lot of people make that comment about your mugshot. You know, just your expression and so forth, and you know how you look. You just
At peace and all that. But I knew I would get arrested. I knew what was going to happen. That's the only mugshot I've got, as it turns out. I wasn't going to let them frighten me. I'm a fellow Southerner. So I got, now most of the white freedom riders are looking a little bit on the scared half to death thing, but they were Yankees. And
here we go again.
Again, I'm
yes.
saying that that word. But
yeah. But so
and it was free room and board for the summer, albeit on death row, and that's where I learned to drink coffee, on death row at Parchman.
So, but before Parchman, they held you in this. You're in the jail, and they're segregated, of course, by gender and race. But the size of this jail, give them a sense of how small this is.
We had 31 people in a cell made for 3, I think. And it was so crowded. One girl slept curled up in the dripping shower stall every night. We slept underneath the bunks. we had less than 3 square feet of floor space. And I don't mean 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. I mean 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot. It was right crowded. Trying to sleep on the floor like that. But we survived it. So actually, going up to Parchman, where we had at maximum 4, usually just 3 in a cell, 2 or 3, bunk beds, and the food was better. No added protein from the bugs on the floor. We got showers once a week. Or was it twice a week? I forget. But it was roomier and cleaner, and the food was better.
I mean, you know, as all things go for death row, that's not bad.
And we knew we were going to get out in the end. Not in a coffin.
But so then you go to Tougaloo College.
Mm-hmm.
And the state of Mississippi is so beside themselves that they actually try to shut down the school because the idea of having a black woman on campus with these black men.
Well, that wasn't bad. Good-looking dudes. I'm not telling you anymore.
No, I don't want to hear anything more than that. We'll leave it there. Just leave it right there, Mom. Put it aside. But obviously, you know, but the school's charter predated the Jim Crow laws. But there was, they didn't even know, a lot of folks didn't even know you were on campus that first night.
Oh, no.
Can you tell that story?
His favorite story.
That's my favorite story, yeah.
Stay at Tougaloo. Well, the first night, upstairs in the dormitory, and back then I think everyone here remembers, you had the restrooms down in the middle of the hallway, not in little suites all over the place. Mother Nature called me in the middle of the night, and I was tiptoeing down the dimly lit hall in a little, what we call a shorty. You remember those that came up about to your knees? And mine was pale colored and swishy, and I was tiptoeing down the hall quietly. Well, Mother Nature had called a girl at the other end of the hall, and she was tiptoeing down, and all of a sudden she screamed bloody murder. She thought she was seeing a ghost. Wow. And she startled me so much I screamed back at her. But Mother Nature won, and we both made it to the restroom and took care of business. And by morning, everybody in that dormitory knew a white girl was upstairs.
Yeah. But to be on this campus, I mean, what was that experience like? What was the engagement with other students?
Well, it was nice. I became a Delta.
Right.
So, you know.
But some of them were a little suspicious.
Some of them at first thought, maybe she's on her semester abroad lark. But as Camille Wilburn said, once I saw you studying just as hard as the rest of us every night in the library, I knew you were okay. And I guess a couple times in the line at the cafeteria, somebody would reach out and touch my hair. They wanted to see what it felt like, but we've heard about that before, just the other way around. And it was good. Well, if I was accepted into the sorority, I was doing okay.
But the Klan would come on campus at times?
Oh, yeah, they were. Burned a couple crosses. And years later, I was working at the Smithsonian after I graduated. And I got asked if I knew where they were setting up a display. Did I know where they might get a burned cross? And I said, oh, yeah, let me make a couple phone calls. They got their crosses, displayed them.
I mean, and Tougaloo was the epicenter of the student movement in Mississippi.
It was the epicenter of the civil rights movement in Mississippi. Anybody who came to Mississippi for civil rights, whether it was the students or adults or things, they came out to Tougaloo, and we gave them their little orientation if they needed it, or they gave their talk. And we had everyone important in Jackson. They came to Jackson, spoke out at Tougaloo. Dr. King, Ralph bunch. We had some singers, Bob Dylan.
Well, Bob Dylan was dating your friend, it's a Dory, so yeah, you saw.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure when that started, but
We'll Have a Girl Down in Mississippi. I mean, that's when it started.
Yeah,
yeah, but I mean,
Pete Seeger was out there. He just met a man and a lawyer on the airplane out of New York, and they knew each other, got to talking. And I'm going out to Toulouse. Oh, well, I'll come too. And so we had a little concert down in this little narrow room, and all I had to just reach across the table. There he was. He was
Pete Seeger.
Not 3 feet.
Yeah, Pete Seeger.
Pete Seeger.
Yeah, my mom's kind of the Forrest Gump of civil rights, by the way. I mean, like earlier when she was name dropping, John Glenn, right? For example, she has this way. I mean, I remember when we were shooting the film, we were walking on campus, and we're just walking along, and she goes, telling me different things, and she just goes, "That's where I had breakfast with Marlon Brando." Just keeps on going. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, Marlon Brando? How's that work? So
he came out to campus too.
Right, yeah.
It was the place to be. It was happening.
Yeah.
And I was there. Woo!
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to say that, I mean, you were actually quite a celebrity in a sense. I mean, Ebony Magazine did like a 6-page photo spread on you. I mean, it was quite a remarkable thing that you were out there and doing this work.
There weren't too many white Southern women.
No. The only 2 left are named Joan.
Yeah. And both of us have Georgia roots.
Yes. And you both live in a state that has the name of Virginia in it. Hers is West Virginia, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so. But nonetheless. 62 happens, and then 63. And this is the Jackson World War sit-in.
Oh, yeah. That was quite the day.
That was quite the day, to put it mildly. And I'm going to play a video from that, I think. This new movement would explode on May 28, 1963, when John Salter and Medgar Evers took the Jackson boycott to the next level. In all, 14 people would participate in what would become one of the most famous and violent sit-ins of the civil rights movement.
I've heard at various times from the reporter, the cameraman, and the son of one of the reporters that this was the most terrifying, frightening event they covered in the civil rights movement. Now, guess they weren't in Birmingham or Montgomery with the Freedom Riders, but they got around, and this to them was the worst.
When the 3 individuals, Perlina Lewis, Memphis Norman, and Ann Moody, sat down at the white counter, nothing happened. Now, Joan, interestingly, was not supposed to be part of this demonstration.
And he said, well, let's go check in what's happening at Woolworth.
They had no idea that this environment had turned volatile until they walked in the store. And it was right at that moment that a thug, a former police officer, had come in and pulled Memphis Norman, the one black male, off of his stool, knocked him onto the floor, and began kicking him mercilessly. Joan was then stuck in the situation wondering what's going to happen next. Ann Moody had been pulled off of her stool and thrown against some of the counters. Perlina Lewis was also pulled from the stool and was down on her knees right by the counter when the police officer came on the scene. Both of them rushed back to the counter, and so that the demonstration would continue. Joan sees all this and realizes, first of all, she is beginning to communicate with the demonstrators. She sees a man with a knife walk by Ann Moody, and she calls out, Annie, he's got a knife. And all of a sudden she's identified with the people at the counter. Who's this white girl talking to those black girls, So all of a sudden she realizes that she's in danger.
But then I sat down. That's when I became a problem.
She walked through that mob in the Woolworth store. And they realized, of course, immediately where she stood.
She joins Perlina and Annie at the counter, the first white to join the demonstration. And at this, the crowd is just incensed. They become like hornets. They start screaming at her.
I went immediately to the lunch counter to sit with Joan and Annie Moody.
When Salter joined, the crowd turned violent. He was knocked in the back of his head with brass knuckles. There was a student who put his cigarette out on the back of Salter's neck. There were several cigarette, and you can still see it to this day. If you look on the back of his neck, he has scars in the shape of a cigarette. They threw pepper and water mixture into his eyes. Things were just going out of control. And at that point, Joan has said that she believed that they were not going to make it out alive. None of them were going to make it out alive.
Memphis, who died maybe 10 years ago, he had headaches for the rest of his life from that being kicked in the head.
Yeah, he was kicked in the head by that former police officer who was kicked off the force because he was too violent even for the Jackson, Mississippi police force, which is striking. Now you were what was called a spotter, and you were at another demonstration down the street.
We had a picket line down at another place, and the picket lines had been
diversion, if you will.
Well, it was a diversion, but they had already been approved to have that people could picket down there, by the city, but they got arrested. So me and Lois.
And can you explain what a spotter is, by the way?
A spotter is a person who just blends into the crowd and watches what's happening. And then we had, back in the day of payphones, which I know you all remember, we would go down and call back to Medgar's office and let him know what was going on. So anyway, after they got arrested, we called Medgar's office and then decided hadn't seen any squad cars or paddy wagons or anything down by Woolworth. So we walked on down that another block to see what was happening, and we found out. That sit-in that we had, that picture of it, ends up being the most used sit-in photo in the world. And I think it was the most integrated sit-in. Black, white, and our professor, John Salter, was a Native American tribal member. We didn't have any Asian American students on campus that semester.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when we released the film in 2013, yeah, gosh, it's been that long. That was the 50th anniversary of the sit-in. Mm-hmm. And there were people who had said, for 50 years, we wondered who that lady was. All they knew of you was the back of your head, and finally they could see you and meet you.
Little aged.
A little aged, yeah. But Ed King, who was the chaplain at the Tougaloo College, was there.
He was the spotter.
He's a spotter, and he felt, wearing a clerical collar, he could probably maybe ease some of the tension there. But he actually went out to the police, and said, hey, because the police were all out there, 50-plus police officers. And it's like, why don't you guys go in and do something, like help the demonstrators? And they said, well, your Supreme Court told us we can't. They were laughing about it. But that's what they were referencing was that very case that had just come down, the one that you said went to the Supreme Court, that said demonstrating was legal. And so because of that case, the police would not go in.
It was their excuse.
It was their excuse, right? So you get dragged out. They grab you by the way, I think they pulled you by the hair, jerk you off, wrap you up. This guy drags you out and drags you out of the store. And there's a whole mob out there, and there's all the police officers, and they see this big guy wrestling you. You're 5'1" and maybe 100 pounds.
Back then. A little more now.
So, but they see this, And they're like, well, she can't be the problem. He has to be the problem. So they arrest him and let you free, and you go back through the mob and sit down. Then John Salter joins you all, and then the photo. But you had mentioned once that you felt that you had like almost an out-of-body experience on this demonstration.
Yeah, it was like the real me had left the body and was up above like a guardian angel. My spirit was up there, watching what was happening, letting me know, keeping me safe. And it was just the shell of my body sitting at that lunch counter.
And this went on for a couple, 3 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours.
And the photographer,
Fred Blackwell.
and I called him on the anniversary of the picture. But he got permission to stand on that lunch counter. He stood there for 3 hours taking pictures of us and the other folks down at the other end of the counter. And when he came in, his sympathies were with the kids in the mob. He had graduated from the same high school just a few years before. He knew a bunch of them. One of them lived down the street, 3 houses down from him. His sympathies were with his friends, understandably. But after watching all this for 3 hours, his sympathies shifted to the demonstrators, the power of Gandhi and nonviolence. Then a kid at a rival white high school saw the pictures in the evening paper, and his heart was changed. That is the power of the press. And I say, never forget the power of the press. Not only are you under attack, things start flying, but the press is too. And sometimes, frequently, they are attacked first. The guy who filmed Memphis being kicked, he was knocked to the floor and his camera broken. So, you got to respect the press.
Because you take it to the streets.
The lawyers take it to the court, but the press takes your issue to the world.
And Medgravers, who was the field secretary of the NAACP in Mississippi, he was the Dr. King of Mississippi. He wanted to come down to the sit-in, and John Salter, Professor Salter, had said, if you go, you're going to get killed.
I'm going, yeah.
So John went instead. 2 weeks later, Medgar would be killed, shot in the back by Byron De La Beckwith while standing in his driveway. And in his hands were T-shirts that said, "Jim Crow must go." And he died.
That was the night that Kennedy went on national TV and spoke on civil rights,
And as he was being taken to the hospital, bleeding out, his last words were, "Let me loose." I mean, he was ready to get back into the fight. He wanted to get back to his family. So 63 is memorialized, particularly with the March on Washington, the I Have a Dream.
The peaceful moment.
Right. But you had the protest in Danville with the fire hoses and police dogs.
In Danville.
Virginia, yeah.
Virginia, you had them in Birmingham, Alabama. You had our demonstration.
Yep.
You had Medgar's assassination.
And then Kennedy would be killed in November of that same year.
Yep.
But on September 15th, 62 years ago today, was the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing.
Yes.
And we have a segment on this. But before I play this segment, the first person speaking is a gentleman named Jerry Mitchell. He's an investigative reporter who, his work, his words, his actions brought the killer, the bomber of the 16th Street Baptist Church to justice, along with Medgar's killer and Vernon Damer and others. It is just through the power of his words and his willingness to do something. All those years later, when everyone thought they got away with murder, along came Jerry Mitchell. And so I think one of those lessons to me is, in particular, is a lot of people, they will beat themselves up. They see all the stuff my mom did and go, I just can't do that. I'd like to think I would, but I can't do that because that's not happening today. We all have our lanes and what we can do. And so we just have to do what we can do, because my mom once said, I can't do everything, but I can do something, because doing nothing is not an option.
And history is repeating itself.
Yeah.
We're going backwards.
But,
we need to keep on keeping on.
Let me play this segment here. Oops, wrong way. On September 15th, 1963, tragedy would befall the most innocent of victims in the battle for racial equality, when a bomb exploded at the 16th Street Baptist Church.
We've all seen the footage of the people getting sprayed by the water hoses and things like that. Well, that was the protests that were going on at that time, and they were essentially being staged from the 16th Street Baptist Church, because it was a downtown church, and they could gather there and then leave from there for their protest. And so that's what was happening. Well, the Klan didn't like that, so what they did is they planted a bomb underneath the steps on the side of that church, and it blew up at about 10:22 in the morning. In fact, these girls were getting ready. There was a youth service that morning, and in fact, the title of the lesson was called "The Love That Forgives." And the bomb blew up and killed those 4 girls.
Time for sadness. There was nothing to celebrate. Glass that we picked up out of the gutters at the 16th Street Baptist Church. The day that 3 of the little girls who had been blown up there were buried. And the police shot over the heads of the people who came out of the church to disperse the mob, right?
We attended the funeral. We were standing outside, and we were going to follow the cortege until Ed King and Diane Nash pointed and showed us the National Guard standing with guns aimed down at us in the streets. The National Guard, who had been nationalized by the President of the United States, had rebel flags on their uniforms. Mm-hmm. And I was holding this American flag, which was not liked. They just fell in love with the American flag recently in the South. And so this flag was a sign of resistance that I was holding. So you could see them standing all up around with the guns drawn.
Where were they, on top of the church?
Yeah, all around.
I didn't look up, I guess.
And so Ed and Diane said, look, 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 look. The same way they did at Medgar's funeral in Jackson when John Doe came out and started screaming, yelling, said, you must stop because they're going to shoot you, pointing to the guns aimed at people in the streets there on Ferris Street. It would have been like Sharpeville Massacre.
I'm not sure they were going to shoot us.
Oh,
we were standing.
You're not sure?
No, the church, you're talking about during the time the funeral was going on?
Yes, ma'am. They had just blown the church up, Joyce.
Yeah, but...
What makes you think they were
Martin Luther King was inside,
so
preaching
he was killed.
The funeral.
He was killed.
Listen, let me speak, please. Will you indulge me a little? No, there were a lot of people standing in front of that church. And I don't know whether they were going to shoot or not, but if there was any restraint to be had on that day, they would have had it. We bring from these experiences different feelings, impressions, and so on.
Well, this is reality I'm dealing with.
Well, so I would have been shot too.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. To bring a lighter note to all that, that's pretty heavy stuff, to say the least. But
Andrew Young's bed?
Yeah, you slept in Andrew Young's bed.
Oh, yeah. Just one night. We were gotten our VW bus, hippie style, and we're driving to go back to campus. And
this is from the funeral.
After the funeral, we were in downtown Birmingham, and the police stopped us. And the driver's husband was following right behind us in his own car. Well, he got out and walked around at the police officer and said, "Why aren't you all out looking for for the bombers. And the police said, well, that's why we stopped them. And Matt, who was a well-known freelance photographer,
And Matt Herron.
Herron, held up his camera and said, unless you'd like to see yourself in the centerfold of Life magazine, you'll let them go now. So they let us go. But we figured they would probably call ahead to their Klan buddies along the road back to Jackson, the Tuvalu. This was before the interstates. It was a narrow 2-lane type thing. You all remember those, I'm sure. So we decided, instead of risking that, we would go to the Gatson Motel, which was the only such establishment in the city where black folks could stay. Well, we got there, and it was just right across from the church that had been bombed, and or a block away. And Dr. King's group had 2 rooms, and when they heard of our problem, King's group gave up 1 room, and so that's how I slept in Andrew Young's bed that night. I don't know, he probably slept on the floor in Dr. King's room, but
Makes for a good story.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's 60.
Not near as juicy as it sounds.
Yeah. Well, you were, I mean, Diane Nash mentioned earlier, I mean, you guys kind of butted heads with each other for a while.
She thought I had the hots for her guy. The truth of the matter was he had the hots for me. But I think she finally realized that after they got divorced.
Yes.
And now we get along fine.
That was Bevel, right? James Bevel?
James Bevel.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a man about town, shall we say.
Martin nods his head. That was 63. 64 becomes this push. So what started with the student movement with SNCC and the sit-ins moves into the freedom rides, and then these students that come down into the Deep South start spreading out into Alabama and such. And there's this drive for Freedom Summer. Now, Alabama had their own thing going as well for quite a number of years. But in Mississippi, the Freedom Summer and this idea of registering black voters. Scandalous. And, of course, Mickey Schwerner and James Chaney and
Andrew Goodman
were all killed. But there was an incident that happened before they died that you were involved in, also with the Klan. Matter of fact, the same Klansmen, come to find out.
Oh.
Could you tell that story?
Well, I can't remember all of it.
It was Canton. You guys weren't supposed to go to Canton. Canton?
Oh, we went to Canton, which was such a rough Klan-controlled town that civil rights workers just didn't go there.
White civil rights workers were forbidden, and yet you went.
Were forbidden to go.
You don't listen.
There was going to be a mass meeting, and so a bunch of us decided to go, and it was an all-white car. Hamid Kisselbosh, who was actually from Pakistan, car. But Pakistanis are considered white by law, and so we went. And apparently were followed a bit going over because we came off of Tuvalu's campus. Muhammad was one of our professors or instructors. And then coming back, we realized we were being followed. And we got to the point of the ramp connecting
The on-ramp,
the old road with the brand new fancy interstate, which had just opened. So we were on that ramp and got boxed in. And they came back up, I forget which direction, I think they came from behind us. And we knew we were dead. But the week before, or a few days before, the leader of the opposition party in the parliament of the legislature in India had been arrested in Jackson going to a restaurant in support of the blacks in Jackson. And we started saying, don't hit him, because they had gotten a hold, the door open and
Or beating on.
beating on.
But before that, word got up to the State Department because the Indian government was complaining about
Oh, yeah.
some of their people getting attacked. So this,
Indian,
yeah.
And so the U.S. State Department had contacted the state of Mississippi and told them, we don't let them attack any more Indians. Get the word out to all the officials to protect the Indians and not to arrest them.
Don't worry about the blacks in Mississippi, just, the Indians, though.
The Indians.
Our own people know, but yes.
And so we started shouting, don't hit him, he's from India, India, India. And Hamid was not happy. I'm from Lahore, Pakistan. And they said, where's Lahore, Pakistan? And we said, it's in India, India, India. And then then they backed off. And the governor of Mississippi had said there was no violence. And if there was any, he wanted to be the first to know. So dripping blood, we took Hamid up the marble steps of the governor's mansion in Jackson, dripping blood all over the place, but the doorman wouldn't let us in. But we tried to let the governor be the first to know. Then we took Hamid to the hospital, where they sewed him up.
Yeah, and so you trained Mickey and Rena Schwerner on what they need to know being white civil rights activists in Mississippi. And you knew Cheney, and they died because you lived.
Yeah, so we absolutely. They wanted to stop Freedom Summer. The plan did. They wanted to, put an end to it all and stop Freedom Summer. And by killing us, and since they didn't kill us, they killed those three. And I lived and they died because of that.
Yeah. And some people have asked you if you ever felt guilt about that.
No, I don't feel guilty. But I try to do a little extra because they aren't here to do it themselves. So I do it. You have to listen to me. That's why you're stuck with me tonight, because I'm doing a little extra for what they aren't here to do.
I want to conclude with this thought, and then we can do some questions.
You think? You think?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Lance, what do you know? Hey, wonders of wonders. I'm your favorite son, too.
That's what they all say.
Now, you did hear her actually say that was a hippie. She said VW, then hippie van. Okay. So, in a hippie van. Growing up, we had a hippie van as well. Because I would say my mom was a hippie. She goes, I wasn't a hippie. I'm like, the van was lavender. It had no chairs in the back seat because she took those out and put bean bags in, and then it had purple fuzzy balls in the windshield. That's hippie.
Oh.
That's hippie. So, but
that boy.
I remember when one of the questions I asked when we were shooting the film was, "Are you a hero?" And you said, "Absolutely not." I said, "Well, what makes you so special?"
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, you said nothing. Right. I just saw something was wrong and just had to do something about it. It takes all of us to make a difference. We just have to make the choice.
Amen. Pass the gravy.
Okay.
So if you aren't totally tired of listening to me and him, question time.
Do you want to say a little something about the foundation before we go into Q&A?
No, I can wrap it up on that.
Okay.
Okay. I can say real quick. So we, obviously you've seen the name, the Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation.
He named the foundation after me without asking permission.
I was honoring you, Mother.
my mugshot on his business card. No permission requested. Just like a kid.
So it's the only mother that complains about her children honoring her. I guarantee this. But so the foundation was created to preserve, share, and continue her legacy while teaching others about the civil rights movement, and to end racism through education. And we do that through documentaries. We've got our 10th one coming out. We do that through our HBCU Micro Scholarship Fund, and we've got a campaign coming up to combat book deserts, so literacy and so forth. We continue to do this work, and that's what the foundation's about. If anyone wants to, we do have the ability to donate to the foundation. Knock yourself out, by all means. Even I tell people, even $1 makes a difference. Someone reminded me. So we had this. My mom's birthday was yesterday. She turned 84. So, as she likes to say, she's still kicking, just not as high. And I did a post on our Facebook page, and it had 2 million views. Like, it reached over 2 million people. And my friend goes, "You should have asked each one for $1." I'm like, "Yeah, that would have been great. I'll remember that next time." But until then, I'll ask each of you to go ahead and donate $1 to the foundation. So we'll start with that 2 million right there. But anyways, okay. So, questions? Yes.
Maybe they're tired of listening.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Loki. Do you remember the moment you realized your mom was maybe a little more than mom?
I get asked that in a couple of ways. So one is, what is it like to have a mother that's a civil rights icon? I'm like, she's just mom, as you have experienced for me, or with me, I should say. We saw the photos. My mom had them around the house. She had her scrapbooks.
They snuck out.
Yep.
Out of the closet.
In college, she was really well known for keeping these scrapbooks of the newspaper articles. In fact, there's a story that Julian Bond told that he received these calls about where was so-and-so, or about this, that, and this. And he said, "Well, I don't have that, but ask Joan at Tougaloo. If she doesn't know, no one knows." Because she had that scrapbook. And they made fun of it for years. And at the 50th anniversary of SNCC, she brought the scrapbooks. And everyone was like, "Man, we're so glad you kept these." Right? But we saw all those, but that was just mom, right? The little cat eye glasses and those sort of things. That was just the photos from then. I think we understood what they represented, for sure. But it was, and the civil rights people would come to the house, and these were just the family friends. But it was really when we got to high school and the new history book came out, and there was the Jackson sit-in photo, and it was like, why is mom in a history book? Right? That's when it really hit. And we really didn't know the stories, the deep stories. When I was making the film, it was 2011 when I was shooting the film, my brothers would, "When is the film coming out?" Because they didn't know it either. I thought maybe it was just me. Like, no one really knew. And so that's when it happened. And there's always something new to learn that we continue to find out on her story.
Like Marlon Brando.
Well, yeah, or Jesse Owens or whomever. All right. And I think the greatest thing that kind of really hits home for me is the random individuals who come up to her. And now it's not even just the old people who grew up then. It's the younger people today who thank her for what she did, and the outpouring we see also on social media and the like, and her sorority sisters, of course. We see this.
None but the best.
Yes, and it's a reminder of just the power of one person's example. And there were thousands. My mom will say there were thousands and thousands of us. Sure.
I just had the son that outed me.
That made the film. But Lou Von Brown, one of the Freedom Riders, who said my mom was the first white woman he ever trusted with his life. He's just like, yeah, but she chose the courage of her convictions. She stayed. She stayed in Mississippi. A lot of people left, come down on their, summer term or whatever, just, summer thing. It was a summer thing to do, and then you go back to school, wherever. She kept on fighting. And that was that difference. And that example of her and others, and quite frankly, white people weren't motivated seeing black people getting beaten on TV or seeing the photographs of black people getting, the atrocities. They were used to that. That didn't motivate them for the most part. It's once they saw themselves and going, wait a second, why are they there? Because that's that representation. Suddenly, a lot of people, like the high school kids that we talked about, like the photographer and so forth, now all of a sudden they have to confront this reality that, this is an American problem. It's definitely a black problem. It's not even a black problem. It's a white problem because it's white people who are doing this to black people. It's the white people. It's the system that has created this. Now suddenly you have to confront this because now there's white people there who are saying, wait a second, this is wrong and I'm going to do something about it.
I want to say that the scrapbooks that I kept on what was happening all over the South, at that SNCC gathering, there was a guy down from the Smithsonian and who's very interested in the scrapbooks, and I ended up giving them to the Smithsonian because I didn't want them to get thrown in the trash later, along with most everything else in the house. But so they're at the Smithsonian now.
Yeah. And if you go to the African American History Museum, there in the Smithsonian, the glass from the 16th Street Baptist Church, some of that's on display. See, there's a jacket. It's my jacket. It says it's her jacket. It's not. It's my jacket. It's her pins on the jacket. But there's different artifacts, actually. I assume they're still on display. I mean, I don't think the administration has completely taken everything out yet. We'll see.
And they got
but nonetheless,
other stuff they
didn't put up. Yeah, that's true.
Including my Delta paddle, but they got some of those other folks' paddle up.
Another question? By all means.
Somebody else.
All right. It's been a long day, so I guess you guys are pretty tired too.
Sitting and listening to you today, it's still hard. Our times are still hard. What are words of wisdom that we can give our young people to keep fighting this fight in our weariness that we sometimes feel the needle is not moving?
I say you decide which issue you're most concerned with, get together with a group of other friends who are concerned about that too, get a specific plan of action, get a specifically stated goal about the problem, and get out there and do something, and never forget the power of the press.
And to me, I think I'll use a different example typically, but we're going to be right here in this moment. Let those kids understand, the youth understand, even just one person can move a massive needle. I mean, we saw that, the impact. I think people are starting to realize, a lot of people were like, who's Charlie Kirk, right? Now they realize who Charlie Kirk was, with Turning Point and everything. And there's this massive emotional groundswell, something I think is a little fake, but nonetheless. But it's a lot of very genuine. They really sucked in on this guy's MO and what he was about, and the power of his influence, particularly on this last election. The turning point is what got Trump elected at the end of the day. And so that was one individual who was good at what he did. Give him credit where credit's due. I don't like what he did, personally. I don't like his ethics and everything else. That's just me. But one individual can really make a difference. And he did. Now, imagine what you could do with something positive, right? Yes, people love watching a train wreck. They love hearing all the negative stuff because bad news travels faster than 10 times faster than good news. But
it leads in the news.
Right. But every little, a lot of a little is still a lot. I mean, it can add up. And those 4 guys at the lunch counter, I remember asking you once, did you guys sitting at those lunch counters ever think there'd be a black president? Because President Obama had pointed back to the 4 guys at the lunch counter. That's why he was president. And you had said, no, we never in our wildest dreams we thought there would be a black president. Furthest thing from our mind. We just wanted to sit down and eat together. But you never know where that will lead to. And that time it led all the way to the White House. Yeah. It's just a quiet group here this time. Oh, yeah, all right. You can ask more questions outside. That's all right. We're taking it in. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
You turned all the Lutherans into Quakers. We're having a Quaker meeting. Would you join me in thanking Joan and Loki for...
And if you raise a fist, don't do it like this, like you're going to fight. Like they told me in South Africa, it's a thumbs up fist. That's a lot more positive.
Friends, I think we may be at an inflection point in our ministries, and I encourage you to do the good trouble thing. And if you need inspiration, look no further than our friend and companion, Joan, who's been on this journey. So, with those words, bless you. Bless you to do the things that will get you in good trouble. Thank you for being here.